Martin Norbury here, and author of I Don't Work Fridays, ex-CEO and business mentor. And welcome to our podcast, High Frequency Fridays. We're on a mission to help businesses survive and thrive, but with the ultimate aim of helping people create a business that successfully runs whether they turn up or not. And today's guest, I'm really pleased to welcome, is Kelly Waters. Kelly, I must just give you a bit background and then I'll let Kelly tell you everything about himself. But Kelly and I worked together, actually employed together for a company called Glasses Guide from, I think it was 97 to 2004. And a lot of things that I've learned about business and the approach to business, I have to put at Kelly's doorstep because he is an incredible person, has a great insight for business, and now runs a very successful, I say development house, but I'll let him explain. So Kelly, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. It's good to be here. I think I learned just as much from you, so I'm sure we would learn just as much if we make this a bit two-way as well. But yeah, I founded a business called 101 Ways, which is a technology consultancy. We help generally big clients with their digital transformation, so building new digital products, web, mobile, data platforms, that kind of thing. And we're usually helping clients that have millions of users, so some of the sort of biggest digital products in the world. And we're about 100 people, something like that. Helping lots of different clients, and how we got to that, let's sort of fill in a bit of the background. I started years and years ago as a trainee programmer back in 1985, would you believe?
Wow.
Straight out of school. School wasn't really my thing, so straight into work, learned to program, found my passion really in software development, and especially when building products that others could use and benefit from rather than just internal systems. And I suppose you could say that the rest is history. Ultimately, after 30 years of doing that, had enough knowledge and expertise to help other companies do the same. So that's what we're about. We do kind of advice, leadership and teams to build digital products.
Wow. And your clients are big companies that need platforms that they outsource for you guys to build. Is that right?
Yeah, not necessarily, I wouldn't say outsource, because I think generally we are working very closely together with our clients. And our people and their people are usually working together to build our platform. It's no secret because it's on our website, but clients are companies like Just Eat, Tesco, Zoopla, so brands that people would know.
Excellent. Okay, and so you've got 100 team strong business, and how long has the business been going?
I started on my own in 2013. So originally it was just me as an independent consultant helping businesses with these kinds of projects and these kinds of technology challenges. But around 2016, I decided to grow it into a consultancy. So just under 5 years since we started to become more than me on my own. Yeah, so it's been relatively quick.
Yeah, it has.
And 4 or 5 years is long enough to see, good years, bad years, challenging years like the last one. So we've had this nice kind of it hasn't been a straight line growth line as people might like business to be. It went up fast, it then hit some bumps. We had a challenging year, then it's rebounding. So I suppose the good and bad thing about it is any business is going to have bumps. It's going to have some hard times as well as good times. And sometimes I think people look at 100-person business, 4 years, straight line, overnight success, and it really isn't like that. It's more like 30 years of background and 4 years of bumpy roads and pit holes to get through. And so it's been a very interesting experience.
But what you've got, I suppose, in 4 years is a microcosm of what some businesses take 25 years to learn. And like you said, your 30 years of experience and you worked for some big old companies as their CTO, didn't you, originally? So all that experience comes into showing what you can do in 4 years and keep control of the ship, as they say.
Yeah, I think I always thought, because managing large groups of people for large corporates and dealing with some of the challenges in bigger businesses, that I always thought that, imagine how much easier it would be if you were just running a small business. And the reality is that you have very different challenges. It's not easier.
Yeah, we often say that, you know, a big business isn't a small large business, as in, you know, the big business is very different to a small business, and they have different challenges. And I think people think that a small business is just a bigger, a large business is a bigger small business. It's not. They're two different animals. Cool. So you've got all the wealth of information to be able to help us with some of the questions we have through our scale model. So just to remind our listeners, you know, our scale model, which comes from our book, I Don't Work Fridays, is all about, you know, S for setup. So how you set up things in the first place and what you need to set up a business. And then once you set it up, how do you then see congruence? How do you align all the systems, the structure, the people to deliver what you need to do as part of the setup and the long-term ambition? And then the A, which is the alerts, because every business and every journey, you need to know where you are on that journey, and are you on the right track or the wrong track? And if you're on the wrong track, what do you do to bring you back? The L, which, you know, I think is one of the most important letters in it, is how do we learn those lessons so we don't keep making the same mistakes as we grow? Otherwise, it gets harder and harder. And then, of course, finally, the E, which is the execution or the exit, to say, let's go round again and start the whole thing off again. So it's an iterative process. So if we go to the S, you know, 4 years is, say, incredible. I think it's incredible growth. So knowing what you know now, if you're setting up that business like in 2013, but knowing in 2016 you were going to try and grow it to the 100-man business with hindsight, and I know you haven't finished yet, it will grow bigger and bigger and bigger. What would you do first now?
I think what I did first is what I would do first if I was to start again.
Good.
So that's one thing. I made many mistakes after that, but the way I started the growth curve, if you like, is exactly what I would want to do again if starting another business now. And essentially, it's test the proposition. And so we didn't start out the growth curve by hiring a load of consultants and then going out to see if we could sell them.
Right.
We started the growth curve by creating, let's say, a vision of what it is we could do to help clients and the kinds of problems we could help them with and how we might pitch that, basically.
Right.
To clients. And when I'm saying we, I think at this time it was actually just me. So
right.
I got in the habit of saying we, because nowadays, of course, nearly everything is done by the team. But
yeah,
back then, I created some slides that were about what this proposition really is and what this idea is and why it would be different to what's already available to people. And I basically sent that out with a little email to just 3 or 4 old colleagues that were in sort of jobs where they were in a position to buy. And all I was looking for at that time was feedback. I was like, if I built a business a bit like this, do you think you would be interested? Do you think you'd want to use our services? And 2 of those 3 or 4 people said, yeah, we need that right now. When can you start?
Oh, wow. So
like, okay, so now I know this business idea is valid, let's say, and I've got 2 real clients already saying they want to buy, and now I have a different problem, which is, well, I wasn't ready to actually deliver it.
Yeah.
I was just testing, but it would be a shame to let that go to waste. So let's crack on and scramble, let's say, and make it happen, because the idea has been validated.
Yes.
And the key thing to that is it validated the idea without spending any money or without needing to take investment, without having to build something first. And not all businesses have that luxury.
No.
But where they do, I think, test the proposition first, check that your idea actually has merit, and save yourself a lot of time and money, maybe putting something to market that isn't going to fly.
Yes. Yeah, there's a very good book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup, which is all about product market fit and why build the ultimate solution if nobody wants it.
Yeah, that's a great book, and it's definitely one of the inspirations behind the thought process, really, of let's test the proposition, see if it has legs, and if it does, we'll figure out how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a sort of a part of the scale model. We have a 9-step journey, and step 3 is like this whole thing about, what's the best route, not what everybody else is doing, but if I think Warren Buffett said, if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete.
Right.
And it's really true. If you've got a similar product or service to everybody else, then eventually you will be challenged just on price. And then suddenly you are now in a which is okay, because your market might be like a EasyJet or something, like you might be focused on price. That might be your core driver. But for most businesses, rather than competing with everyone else, the idea of actually having a product market fit, which is very different to everyone else, and testing it is superb. I love that as a concept.
Yeah.
It's quite, I suppose we talk to clients about doing that. And most people, you were very fortunate by your 4 or 5 friends in the industry said, not only, hey, great idea, but when can you start? Because sometimes people go, great idea, and then when you ask them for the money, they go, oh, actually, did you want some? So that must have been a real encouragement for you to go, right, I've just now got to get on and do that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, definitely. And I've definitely seen that situation you're describing in the past, where you do some market research or some sort of user testing, and people say, that's fantastic. If you did that, I would definitely buy that. And then you do it and they don't.
No, that's right.
So I think you also have to understand that just because you got a yes to some slides doesn't mean you're going to get a contract or or an order. There's still risk, but at least you know that there's interest. And
yeah, I think that's really, going back to our days at, when we worked at Glasses Guide, we started working together on a project for a large insurance company, because they were coming up for a tender in like a 2-year period. And we sort of basically created a concept which we knew they would need. And I think that's the key. What you did when you went to your 4 friends or colleagues in the industry, I think you were pretty certain they would need it. And of course, the validation of the proof of concept or the product market fit was they actually said, yeah, I do need it. I need it now. And that's great. And I think too many people then have an idea, then go and test it, but actually really understanding what the market needs.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. So I think that some privileges, if you like, that I had that not everyone would have was, firstly, I had been in the seat of a buyer.
Yes.
So I'd been a technology director in big companies. I knew what problems I had.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I wasn't alone in having those problems, and that I knew the solutions to those that existed previously are not perfect. And if I could see, if only we did it differently, I could see, what that might be. And so that's a fortunate position to be in, where you have been a buyer and you know what is needed. And then the other thing is being well connected.
Yeah.
In order that I can ask 3 or 4 senior level friends and ex-colleagues who would take the phone call, I suppose, who would bother to, who would then trust me, in order, because there's an element of trust, isn't there? They said, yes, I want it now, but maybe they did that because they knew and trusted me, and wouldn't have maybe done that to a stranger. So I think that that's not luck necessarily, though. I think that's like 20 years of networking, helping people when you had nothing, when you needed nothing in return, and knowing that those people would all go on to other things, go up in their careers, and ultimately that network is going to pay back.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I call it networking, not net sitting, because you actually work with, network is one of the most invisible, valuable assets that anyone can have, without a doubt. I often rely on mine quite a bit when times are tough, or they rely on me as well, which is great.
I did a lot of it all through my career. I think sort of more than 20 years actually. I did a lot of networking where people would ask for help or advice on something. I would help them out, and I can remember a few times some people saying to me, "Why do you give time to these people? Why are you helping people where there's nothing in it for you?" And I always thought, like, if you help someone, they'll help you back.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know you well, and you would do it just because you are a nice and kind person, and you like giving and stuff like that. You were, if I remember rightly, an author of one of a blog that was probably one of the biggest blogs in your subject area about agile development, and that blog was viewed by thousands of people, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we had like 100,000 views a month at one point.
There you go. And you won awards of the blog of the, all those sorts of things. So you were really, you position yourself as a specialist, you were a specialist, and you had a network of people that could help you. And again, those, when you're looking at what you'd set up in business, whilst it's not an overnight thing, a lot of people that I know have got all those assets. They don't realize they're there.
Yeah, actually, I think both ways around. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't think to mention it. But when you think that for 20 years you're sort of networking, helping people randomly for no benefit, and you create a blog, you write about a topic for years, and it was a huge effort.
Yeah.
And nothing in it for me. I wasn't doing it towards the business or anything. But then when I came to start a business, as you say, they are all assets, aren't they? They
absolutely
all came together to make growth possible. It was the fact that I knew a lot of people, I'd helped them out in the past, because of the blog, people had heard about what I do. And so I think when we came to market, all of those years of, what would you call them, foundations or building blocks that weren't really for that purpose, but
they aligned.
Yeah, exactly.
So which brings me on beautifully to our next topic on the scale journey, which is the word congruence. I really wanted the word alignment, but as you probably gathered, scale is SC, not SA, and I wanted the alliteration to be SCALE, and I had to find, I didn't want A to be the alignment in the middle, it had to be the beginning, so that's why I call it congruence, but it's alignment for those people that know. So all those things aligned for you. In 2016, did you think by 2021 or at some point you'd have like 100-man business? Was that your ambition, or was it more about let's just see where we get to?
Yeah, it wasn't at all. I'd love to say I had this plan and I pulled it off and it was perfect. No, what happened was my vision wasn't a high ambition, was fairly simplistic, was if we had half a dozen people doing this, then that would be great. It would be a lovely, I think I refer to it as a boutique consultancy at the beginning. And, it would be nice and small, easy to manage, create a lot of value for people. And I get half a dozen people with similar experience to me, so that instead of saying no when I get called about work that I'm not available to do, I can say yes, and we'll do it together. And then what we found is started to do that, got half a dozen people doing leadership roles similar to what I'd done before. What we started to find then is people or clients would say, well, that's great, but we don't know how to implement this. We don't have enough people to implement it. We don't have enough skill to implement it. Could you do it for us?
Right.
So we would then bring teams to actually help deliver, as well as providing the leadership and consultancy. And so, which was really what that pitch deck idea was really about, was what if we bring a full team and we basically do end-to-end delivery as well as consulting and advice. And so so that's probably the thing that made the most difference. It was like, let's just start a business with a handful of people, but then we saw what clients needed in addition and we offered that, and suddenly it took off.
Excellent. So in some ways, the first, obviously the product market fit and then actually delivering it created more demand and more needs, and not just vertical but horizontal needs as well. So you went deeper in and across. At what point did you realize, and then how did you then align the business? And the reason I ask this question is because the ultimate aim of most people in an entrepreneurial role is, one of the biggest things is this time, Rodney, next year will be a millionaire type concept, which means we're going to sell it or get it to a point where we don't have to be in it so much.
Yeah.
And of course, to do that, the vision of where you're going at some point, everybody has to take over because to do that, you need to align, the structures, the systems, the people to the long-term plan, if there is one, and stuff like that. So first of all, this two-part question, what point did you realize that needed to happen? And two is, how did you make that happen?
Yeah, I realized it very early because I was working in a client as a consultant for most of the week. And so very quickly it's like, oh, they want all this stuff and I can't do it because I'm already signed up.
Right.
So immediately there was a need to bring somebody on board, hire somebody who could start executing on that and manage the delivery of that. So so it was one of the first things I did was hired Zane, who at that time was a COO. I
Right.
felt very grand to call him a COO when there was like nothing. He used to laugh as well, like I'm a COO of like almost nothing.
Yes.
But obviously, as we grew, he was the pivotal person who managed the operations and the delivery. And so first thing was I hired somebody who was really, really good at delivery.
Right.
And I think a key part of that is sort of recognizing what you're good at and what you're not. Actually, I don't want to say I'm not good at it because I did delivery as a job, but he's even better.
Right.
and I was quite into the sort of slightly entrepreneurial, come up with the idea, the vision, really passionate about it, go out and sell the idea, not necessarily as a salesperson, but more like a
Visionary.
Yeah. And then, but then I knew I needed somebody alongside me who was really strong at delivery. So one of the first sort of alignment things was to get somebody who's bought into the business idea, joining at the beginning. So really, that's the alignment part. Believes in the vision, thinks that it's going to work, and will quit their secure, good day job to join me on this adventure, and we don't know where it's going. So,
Nice.
so that's the first part of alignment. Get a partner alongside me who could do that, and then as we grew, I suppose it's a case of building out a good team of people around you who buy into the vision, who have the right complementary skills, who will work well together. And I initially did that just by, I suppose it's the old classic approach, but I hired people I'd worked with before that
Yes.
I know we get on. I know we're complementary in the way we work. I know if we disagree, it's a valuable disagreement as opposed to an argument.
Yeah.
And I trust them. And so I built a small team initially from people that I'd worked with mostly before.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's the main thing that we did. And as we grew more, we had to start bringing in people who we hadn't worked with before.
Yes.
And I think is much more challenging, actually. I realize I'm not very good at recruitment. That's I realize one of my weaknesses now. I'm very good at recruiting people I've worked with before and convincing them to come on a journey with me.
Yeah.
I'm not good at recruiting random strangers and validating that they're good. So it was important for me to bring like a trusted group of people to do this with.
Right. And but the people that then came in, because there's sometimes when you have a business and you set it up originally, there's the haves and the have-nots. So the people that with you at the beginning that got your time they could just knock on your door, walk in, chat to you. And then as the business gets bigger and bigger, that obviously can't happen too much.
Yeah.
Because, so the new people coming in, did they have a vision, mission, purpose to follow? Did they have sets of values? Did they have that? Were you clear about those?
Not to begin with. Well, maybe we were to begin with, but it was verbal, and
right.
So it doesn't scale as well.
No.
At the beginning, there's a verbal, that had a vision, had an idea of how we were going to be different, had an idea of the culture, the values, and what this needed to feel like, let's say, as well as what it needed to do, but what it needed to feel like. And that was a very strong part of what we set out from the very, very beginning. I think once we got to about 40 or 50 people, we had a moment when we realized, like, the first 10 people get it.
Yes.
And the rest are brilliant people, but they don't actually, it's
a job.
This stuff is not baked in, let's say. They don't understand what all that background is, and we haven't communicated it well enough. So we had it, but it wasn't necessarily communicated strongly or frequently enough. And so we started to articulate it better, bring it onto our website. And one of the ways we did that is we got lots of people in a room.
Okay.
And we actually started to try and extract our values from them.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, I came up with 3 words and put them on the wall.
Yeah.
And so we would, what we wanted really was their values are really just a reflection of who we really are, rather than something we're trying to force you to be.
Yes.
And so because we had hired people that were like we wanted, but we didn't have a common way of describing it.
Right.
And I think even to this day, we don't really think of it like the 3 words you write on the wall, but more like, I think I would see it more, I would see culture as something that's like, what is it like when you get someone from 101? What are they like? There's a type. They're not. It's not. It's a bit like going into Starbucks and you always get the same coffee.
Yeah.
Versus going into an independent coffee shop, and sometimes they're amazing, but other times they're terrible.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I just compared us to Starbucks. So I think that's something maybe don't want to put out there. I think hopefully our quality is very high, but the point is there's a type. And this is when we brand and culture. The vision from the very beginning was, if you buy from us, you know what type of person you get. There's a brand identity that they identify with, and feel it, see it. So I think we had that very strongly early on, but had to learn how to articulate it better.
Yeah, and I think, you know, my definition of culture, it probably wasn't mine originally. You know, as with anything, we hear it, we learn it, regurgitate it, adapt it, adopt it, and think it's our own after a while. But mine is that, you know, the way things are done around here. You know, so and that's really difficult to put into like one or two words. It is a feeling, but the trouble is, for new people in a business, they don't know how it's done around here. So you've got to really try and recruit them based on having some kind of implicit understanding of the way things are done around here. And then the more it grows, the more people get it straight away. 'Cause I don't think you can scale a business with, and I've seen it, I've seen a company grow from one site to two sites. The one site, an example I use is I went to the one site to do something, and the way it was done around there was exactly as the owner wanted it to. You could just, you know, it just felt right. And the same afternoon I went to the other site, which is only about 8 miles down the road, and you walked in and it was like I was in a completely different business. And it was a different different, not division, different product set, but it felt like I was in a completely different business. And I immediately went back to the owner and said, you've got a big challenge coming your direction, because it's not joined in any, it's not aligned in any shape or form. And sure enough, that whole product, because it didn't get picked up quick enough, collapsed at some point. And it wasn't because the product wasn't any good. It was just because the way things were done around there was different, and it didn't replicate the model that he wanted.
Yeah, I think that's why it is important to have that kind of the culture from the beginning, and make sure people are. And one of the most important parts of alignment, I think, apart from where you're going, objectives, buying into that, and wanting to join you on that journey, is this cultural piece. And in that case, it was like we wanted to create somewhere where people could thrive by being themselves.
Oh, nice.
So I like this idea of you're an IT person in a large corporate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when back then it was like probably wearing a suit. Consultants rather who come into organizations like that, probably wearing a suit, probably got very shiny shoes. They use a lot of buzzwords that make us cringe. They do a lot of slides and PowerPoint, but they don't deliver necessarily. And we wanted to create somewhere where actually you dress as yourself. You say what you think, whether it's politically correct. I don't mean about being offensive to other people.
No, I understand.
Whether it's business politically correct or not, you say it how it is. You're direct and honest, and you can be comfortable just being yourself at work. And you don't have to look like a consultant to be an expert and do consulting.
Yeah, because you don't look, and so people that are listening to this probably won't have the view of Kelly I have. You don't look like a general, what I would call a successful CEO consultant. But then nowadays, what is that? And I think that's the key thing, is being yourself is absolutely one of the key parts of leadership, isn't it?
It is. I think if you go back to 2013, I was probably still wearing a suit at work,
right?
Even a tie. And this now we probably look at how we look and think, well, it's not that different. A lot of businesses like that, but it wasn't when we got going. When we got going, we got a lot of feedback about it being so refreshing, because I'm dealing with humans, like not robots, and instead of all wearing the blue suit, looking like consultants and speaking the consultant lingo, you just come and have a real conversation with me and tell me what you think. And you look like, because you just look like you, not like factory unit. I trust your advice. There's an authenticity that
absolutely right.
Important, not only in leadership but in any engagement. So I wanted to create this authenticity. That people also could be a bit weird and still be fine with that.
Nice.
That sound wrong, but like thrive by being yourself is also about diversity and inclusion, and if you're a bit, you could be a bit weird but also an expert, and it's totally fine. You can still be a consultant, because actually there's value and knowledge and a lot of integrity in your authenticity, and actually we want to be a consultancy that feels fundamentally different to others.
Nice. And well, again, it's part of the USP, again, using words, but it's part of what makes you different as a business. And there are some companies that will never come near you, potentially,
of course,
because you don't conform. But yeah, exactly. But what you're doing is you're polarizing views, and the people that love you will love you even more, and the people that don't like you would never work with you anyway. So actually,
I think that's really important. You have to you have to be yourself, and if people don't like it, it's tough. It's tough. It's fine. An example of that, just a little anecdote. I can remember, like, I would go into a large, beautiful office building, lots of marble and glass, and for one of our clients or potential clients, and I would go in I'd go in my jeans and t-shirt and my ever-growing beard, and I walked in, and the security guy stood up a bit sharpish and said, "What do you want? You can't come here." And I was like, "Oh, but I've got a meeting with the CEO."
Yes.
And he went, I'm
really
sorry. Can you come over here and sign in? And that for me summed it up. Like, why? Because I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt and a beard and walking with a cup of coffee out of the cold and rain, do you think I'm a homeless person looking for shelter, as opposed to coming for a meeting with the CEO? And why, if I want to talk to your CEO, do I need to look a certain way? So I would go to into a client's board meeting looking like that, and comfortable with that. And obviously not everyone is comfortable with that, but this is what we tried to create, is you're just you. We're just going to be ourselves. We're just going to say,
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Just go and buy for someone else. That's fine.
Yeah. Jim Carrey's got an amazing video about his dad, and his dad wanted to be a comedian, but he ended up being an accountant, which he didn't want to do. And they said after 5 years of being an accountant, they let him go. So basically he failed at what he didn't want to do in the first place. And he said, why would you ever do that? Why don't you do what you want to do? At least if you fail then, you failed at doing what you want to be, how you want to be, how you want to do. And I just love that as a concept. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I always felt strongly about that. And I think that's what made us different at the beginning. And obviously, increasingly, people are like that at work anyway now. It's becoming more the norm, especially now we're all at home and remotely as well. So it's not such a big point of difference at this moment, but it definitely was a big point of difference in the early days.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so we sort of covered alignment and congruence pretty much. So the way I look at this is a journey. So you've set up, you've done your product market fit, it's growing, it's starting, you've aligned your team. So as you're going on this journey, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, what are you doing to know you're going in the right direction?
Well, I suppose first you have to have a direction, don't you? To know what that so I suppose the first thing, you have to have a way of visualizing or articulating where you're going, not necessarily an end destination or end point, but at least
some point.
Yeah, and then I guess you can start to look at what other really important factors that will help us to get there, and have metrics on those. So I'm a big fan of being data driven.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean listening only to the data, of course. There are many things that you can't measure, but having metrics and data about some key things that help me to understand where we are. And what I've noticed over the years is when you can put a number on something, it feels really tangible and concrete. You can really grasp where you are in a way that you can't with the description.
Yeah.
And so I always look for, of course, some narrative and descriptions about how things are going, what we're up to, how people feel, but also some numbers, some metrics that we can gauge our progress by.
Yeah.
An example of that would be, we're not unique in this, obviously, but we use NPS as a way of measuring how happy our consultants are.
Okay. So, okay, that's nice.
And if I think about what we were just talking about culture and thriving by being yourself, we want it to be a place where people are happy and feel like they belong and they fit and they can be themselves. And
nice.
through this, we'd have people who love their work, love working with us, and would actually therefore do a great job with the clients. And yeah, so measuring NPS is one example where we just measure how happy people are, how willing they would be to recommend us to a friend. And we've got really high scores. We've focused a lot on the happiness of our people, basically. And as a result, we get consistently high scores. And actually, the last one was like 92 or 93 or something.
Wow.
And anything above 0 is good. It's like nearly
Pretty
everyone
much.
is 9 out of 10 or 10. So we really focus on that. But before we measured NPS or used NPS as a way of measuring the happiness of our people, we still had this vision of creating a happy place where people would fit in and enjoy their work, but we didn't really know whether we were delivering on it.
Absolutely.
You'd ask around, you'd listen to people moaning a lot. Are they not moaning a lot? Do they seem happy? But you didn't really know, well, how happy are they? How many people are happy? And once we see, and then we got 70, and then we got 90, so we said, well, they're really, really very happy at the moment.
Yeah.
And then when we had a dip, there was a period when we had a dip in that, it went down to about 50. I'm just checking you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's all good.
When we had a dip in NPS, went down to about 50 or so, which is still a really strong result, but wasn't something that was strong for us. We would be like, okay, what's wrong? We've got the alert, you call them alerts or alarms.
Absolutely.
We've got the alert. We're not happy with 50. 50 might be good in a lot of companies, but we're used to 70 plus, and we want to find out now why people are less happy, and we're going to find out why, and we're going to do something about it. And because we're measuring it, we know when we fixed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is something which is now as high as it's ever been. So despite being a really, really challenging COVID year, it's by far the highest it's ever been. So I think that's one example where it's not profit. But if we didn't have that number, we didn't have that vision of wanting that to be our state, the way it feels to be in one-on-one, then we wouldn't really have a clue where we were.
No.
When it was broken, when we fixed it. I think for me, having been able to put a number on it, which I think is your point about alerts and alarms, isn't it? You how do you know? So the good thing is, whether I was in the business doing work or not, I would see that number and I would know whether to react.
Yeah.
And if the number's 92, my only reaction is to post it on LinkedIn to thank the team that made it such a happy place and to feel good about it. If the number's 50 and we think it's good but not good enough, then obviously there's some actions we can take.
Yes, absolutely.
To work on it and improve it. But
it also becomes a common language in the business.
So we try to have metrics on all the things that yeah, it is, yeah, because then we all know, okay, this is when we say happy, this is how we measure it.
Exactly.
They may or may not be happy every day, but we can judge how willing they are to recommend us, and that's our measure of happiness. So we try to have a metric on everything that matters to us, both from a business point of view, from a delivery point of view, from a client point of view, from a consultant point of view. So it's not just about money and the business side.
Absolutely.
And there are some things that
I love the fact metrics that manage. Metrics that what did you say? Metrics that. What did you say? You used a really good phrase then. Metrics that matter. I love that. Yeah.
I said metrics that matter to us, or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. Try and have metrics on everything that matters to us, and then keep an eye on how they're going. Make sure that that if sorry about the Wi-Fi breaking up, but so talking about measuring the things that matter to us, making sure we act on it if there's any sort of numbers that are not what we would like, keeping an eye on those. But then I was saying we're not obsessive about it. We're not always banging on about the numbers. They're not the most important thing. They're measures of where we are. But what's more valuable, more important, is doing good work and delivering good quality and doing the right things, and the numbers reflect that. But the numbers give us a sense of where we're really at.
Yeah, I suppose that there are numbers that matter more to a business. And unfortunately, this is how most businesses, until Kaplan and Norton came up with the balanced scorecard, but how most businesses was purely financial. But of course, if you haven't got enough cash in the business, then you're going to have a problem. So you do need to keep an eye on those things, that hygiene numbers, I would call them, things that every business should be keeping a focus on. But like after that, unless we've got, again, I was part of a PLC, and if we didn't have certain numbers in the right place, our share drops and the board got sacked and everything would happen. Whereas you run your own business with your team, and most of my clients run their businesses to help them, their families, their lifestyles and everything. So we don't have to be slaves to our numbers, but they're there, like you said, as a guiding point. It's not going in the right direction. What do we want to do about it? Okay, we'll take some time out. We'll do this, we'll do that. But they are decision points.
Yeah, exactly. They give you a chance to know when you need to act, and that you might be unaware of otherwise, or you have a lot of things to think about and do. And it's very easy to miss something that's important to you if you don't have something regularly popping up and telling you. And so I think that's something we've always done, but we've got a lot better at it in the last couple of years as we grew.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that neatly brings us on, because obviously scale model is an iteration. It follows one after the other. So when you do get to something in the business that isn't working, whether it's a customer relationship, whether it's numbers, whether it's some staff, or it's just general things, how have you set up an environment that the business welcomes the learning from the experiences rather than shunning them as failures and just doing the same things over and over again?
Yeah, there's some important principles as well as some practices or processes, isn't it? So first of all, coming from a background of agile development, agile is all about iterative development,
right?
Building something small, measuring it, learning from it, course correcting, and eventually emerging with the right thing, as opposed to knowing what the right thing is at the beginning.
Yes.
So I suppose took that philosophy into business just the same. And I also remember reading about some of Gary Hamel's work, even as far back as the 70s, I think, around emergent strategy and adaptive leadership, and not really being like a 5-year plan on a defined thing, but more like it's all about learning. And if you can create an organization that learns and adapts, that will mean that you'll find the right strategies.
Yes.
You'll respond to the right problems, that you're more likely to survive. You're thinking about like evolution, you're more likely to survive if you're able to adapt.
Yeah.
And so so I always had that kind of philosophy, and I suppose a lot of the principles that come into that are things like, not beating somebody up with a baseball bat when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Being prepared to listen and not show your frustration when somebody comes to you and talks about a problem. Sometimes people come and talk about a problem and you're thinking inside, this is a disaster, this is a nightmare, what on earth are we going to do? And outside you're trying to say,
that's okay.
It's okay. We can figure this out. And so I suppose it's trying to have that. That's like the I don't know, what's going on inside and outside are a bit different, but you're trying to actually make the environment one where it's fine to talk about problems. It's fine to talk about things that are difficult, things that aren't working. It's fine to have different opinions. All these things are fine, because what we're going to do is we're going to listen to them. We're going to work through them together, and we're going to find a way.
Yeah.
And so there's some principles, I suppose, but in practice, one of the things we do regularly, which also comes from agile development, is a retrospective. And it's where we just get everyone together on a topic. It can be a regular cadence, like it is in a development team, or it can be occasionally when you feel it's needed. And we just, and the basic format is, what's gone well, what hasn't, what can we change to make it better in future. And we come to something very actionable, and create a safe place where we can talk about.
Lovely.
Where we recognise what's gone well, but talk about what's not. And then what we can change makes it more action oriented, so that we actually improve as opposed to just reflect.
I love that.
We do regular retrospectives in development teams, usually every couple of weeks, like all the time, because there's always something that could be better.
Yeah.
And within our business, we call a retrospective every now and then when there's something we think isn't quite right, or we do them often in our strategy meetings, where we might spend best part of a day talking about things once a quarter. We'll start with a retrospective.
Yeah.
And make sure we understand, like, we've got everybody's views. And the way we do it is with people chipping in with post-it notes and things so that everybody has a voice. It's not like the loudest, most assertive person gets to say everything. It's more like everyone gets to put their post-its in, everyone gets to raise their view. We're going to gather them together. We're going to organize them into clusters. We're going to see what other big themes that we all seem to have problems with, and what we're going to do with those. And then a great discussion about what can we do. Like,
absolutely.
Make that better for everybody. And then if you do that often enough, then inevitably you'll improve.
Well, you also create a culture, and I think, coming back to the way things are done around here, you create that culture of we will make mistakes. We'll all support each other as we do them. We'll learn from them. We'll find a way of either managing the expectation or not making the mistake again if we can, and then we'll put it into practice. The only time people might be slightly more frowned upon is if they make the same mistakes over and over and over again, because that's careless.
It's careless, yeah. But I think I'm not sure if it's frowned upon in our culture. I think it's probably more like, if it's happening more than once, then it's obviously difficult to remember. So we need a process.
Okay, nice.
So we'll probably be more like, somebody else like made the same mistake, or you did the same thing last quarter. So what could we do with our processes to make sure we remember that?
I love it.
And so we have a lot of checklists that we use, where, when we're onboarding a new person, when we're moving a person between engagements, there's like a checklist for everything.
Yeah.
And you just look at it and tick off the things that you need to do or think about. And often we would take those learnings and build them into those checklists so that people have got a
reference point.
You just don't have to remember it all, and the learning gets baked into how we do things around here, as you call it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it. I think, again, I said at the beginning, for me, L is the biggest part, where businesses are so ingrained in the reactive of day to day, they don't stop and look at actually what caused that in the first place, and can we ever do something? We're responsible to do something to stop it happening again. And when you do that, I think your business takes on a whole different form. The key is the culture of not punishing people for mistakes.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you do that, then they go, "Oh, wasn't my fault. Someone else was blamed."
Then you get, of course, you get blame. You get people covering stuff up.
It's awful.
So I think when you create a really open culture through processes like that, then you're going to be in a better place, where if there are issues, you know about them. So I had a thing where somebody would come to a project manager, tell them project's running late. The project manager would sit them over the head, would get angry, whatever. The next time the project's running late, they won't
tell them.
Asked to know.
No. We're not dogs, which you can kick a dog. Don't condone that, and don't want anyone to do that. But you can kick a dog, but it'll keep coming back for more. But at some point, it'll stop. Well, humans, we stop a lot quicker. If we get burnt, we stop a lot quicker. And one of the hardest things, because the path of an entrepreneur sometimes is very intolerant. Oh, I do it the best. This is my way. Get on and do it. Bang, bang, bang. And we've both worked in an organization where we've had some people at the senior levels, I won't name anyone obviously, who've been exactly like that. Do as I tell you to do. If you don't do it, you're in trouble. Well, you're just never going to voluntarily want to help that person. You'll do it under fear. And that, for motivation, is the worst point to be, I think, going forward.
I think the thing about people can be motivated by fear, but it's short term, isn't it? And it does.
Yeah, very much so. And your post-it note thing, I don't know if you do the same as I do, because we try and bring tools out of this as well. But when we do the post-it note exercise, everyone gets like a pack of, I'm down there, we all get a pack of like that, so like 4 or 5 in there or 10 in there. We write on the top one, and then we pass it to our left. And then the person sees what we've written, they write their own, but it stimulates everyone around. And we do that about five or six times around. And for the people that sometimes struggle with being creative, they read 5 other people's post-it notes and they come up with their own idea, which is genius. And it really helps.
Yeah, that's very good. And I think the most important thing about gathering information from a group like that is, as I said, I suppose everyone has a voice.
Yeah.
So the quiet person gets to contribute too.
Yeah. And people that are scared to contribute because their idea isn't very good, they still contribute, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and it's not seniority or,
No.
or loudness driven. Everyone's put their stuff there, and those things that are more of a common feeling amongst the group are the ones that we'll spend more time discussing.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's group consent, which I think is great. So in essence, what we've done with our journey, we've set up our business through trial and error, through product market fit. We've understood where we're going. We've aligned ourselves to it, to try and align things around it to try and help it as it grows, not become a real unwieldy beast. We've measuring. The business is telling us if it's going in the right direction or not. We're not a slave to it, but we are aware that, okay, something's not working. We need to fix it, which is quite good. Dashboards do that. Obviously cars do that. If you run out of petrol, it tells you. We still drive a bit further, but it tells you. And then obviously now we're on that journey. We're learning. We're hungry to learn what goes right and what goes wrong. And so we can improve ourselves, improve the experience of our customers, make everybody's journey. And I think Google to say it, have a business that's got psychological safety. People love coming to work because they feel safe. Nothing they do, as long as it's moral, legal, and ethical, is going to actually cause a big problem because they're themselves. So we've now got a business, Kelly, that I suppose in some ways we could start stepping away from. And again, going back to our ultimate aim is we help business owners set up their business that runs whether they turn up or not. So how far do you think you are with 100 people in your business, big clients with some real big demands and stuff like that? How far do you think you are into that journey of whether you could potentially step away from it yourself?
Well, to share something personal, back in May 2019, I had to step away.
Oh, okay.
For family health reason. It was an emergency situation. I had a couple of days to sort my diary out and step out, and I was still connected to the business. I was still monitoring those metrics, talking and supporting some of our people, but fundamentally I was no longer operational. And it happened very, very suddenly, and it went on for about a year and a quarter before I was able to get back into things, and even then not fully. And so health is a great reminder of the need to set up a business like that, isn't it? Because health problems, they come out of the blue, that you don't know who they're going to happen to. It could be you, could be a family member, hopefully not, but they're not in your control, and you need to know your business will continue. Something like that happens to you. And so sadly, like, I did have a situation like that where I had to step out suddenly. And the first thing is, well, some of the stuff we've been talking about is a huge help, like the metrics, where you can look at the numbers and go, okay, I can relax. I'm not there, but the things are okay. So having those alarms, alerts, metrics and things help a lot. The most important thing, obviously, I think it's stating the obvious, is to have the right people around you that can step up or step in. People who see the gap and they close together and close ranks, as it were, and cover the stuff you were doing. And I suppose if you don't have people you trust with a little bit of capacity, with the willingness, maybe that comes from the alignment, to step in and help out, then it's probably a disaster. So in my case, I was very fortunate. I have very good people around me, very willing people to step in and cover. An excellent COO who stepped up to be CEO, and he's still CEO. He was acting CEO when that happened, and then after a while, it's like, oh, he's actually better at this than me. We'll let him carry on. And so what would you say? Like, good metrics. More importantly, good people around you that are aligned and willing to pull together and get through that. Add a little bit more cost, so cover some of the stuff that, put people in to cover some of the stuff that I was doing. Accepting that as a business owner, you do a bit of everything. Even when you're bigger, you do. You're obviously a bit of finance, bit of marketing, a bit of sales, bit of CEO, a bit of delivery. like a bit of everything, aren't you? The legal advisor, it's sort of,
Absolutely.
and yes, you sort of wear many hats, and I think when you step out, you sort of realise that you have to then put in probably quite a lot of extra cost just to make sure that, well, actually, I'm not going to find someone who will do all of that
No.
because they're not the business owner. So then you have to actually get to a stage where you build out a team that covers all of the functions that you may be involved in those things when you're able to, but if you're not, they carry on. And I guess you just have to get to a certain size where you can afford to do that.
Yeah.
You know, a big constraint is the cost of it.
Yes.
But if you do get to a good enough size to do it, then you absolutely must do it. Otherwise, when one of these emergencies pops up, your business falls over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose in some ways you can do they call them mini retirements and stuff like that to test the team out where you're not there. But the ultimate thing, like, you know, when you went to your friends at Beeling and said, "Hey, I've got this idea," yeah, they could have turned around and said, "Hey, yeah, we'll back it." But actually, the proof is when they really do back it. And it's the same with your team. When you had to step out through your situation, and 2 or 3 days notice, which isn't a lot of time to set any of these things up.
No, it's not time to hire someone, is it?
No. Then your team, yeah, they might have fumbled a little bit. It might have been a bit different. You weren't there all the time, but you had the basics in place for them to do that and to take over and the business to run. And, you know, sometimes it's a fear, I think, the entrepreneur. One is it won't work without them. I think sometimes the hidden fear, Kelly, is it'll work better without them.
Yeah, I think some things have definitely worked better. Because, you know, the reality is different people are better at different things. And so when somebody steps in, they're going to do some things better than me.
Yeah.
They're going to do things worse than me. That's where we need to bring them the right support.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you can do it. But I guess you do, you know, just acknowledging you do need to be a certain size or to have enough revenue to cover the cost of building a team like that. And if it had happened earlier in our journey, when we didn't have the money to do it,
yeah,
obviously we would have struggled more and it might have knocked the business over. But when you do get to a size where you can do it, I think it's important to recognise that you must.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not about, oh, I don't want to retire till 5-10 years time and therefore I don't need to do it yet. It's more like, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
You need to build a business that's robust and can work if something happens to you.
Yeah, well, and this is how I sort of came to the conclusion with the scale model, really, was because, you know, February the 19th, 2010 is when our daughter came into the world and left us on the same day. And I left the business that I was running, which was over 600 staff at that point, across lots of divisions, lots of different buildings, different areas of the country, and just completely left it. And it was, you know, it was a PLC. It wasn't a great thing to do, but everybody knew what had happened and they gave me time. And April the 1st that year, I went back for one day and realized that my life had finished at corporate. I couldn't do it anymore. I needed to be home. I needed to be with Jackie. I needed to do the things I needed to do. But what I did start to realize afterwards, because you don't think about that, is I think since then, and so that was 2010, you know, I was there for nearly, you know, 7-8 years as the MD CEO. And then since my incarnation, there's been quite a few different, because they've tried to change things so quickly that actually there's been lots of incarnations. And the team that I had put together that were part of the success, I'm still really, really close to. And that was the team that did it. Absolutely the team that did it. And the new people came in, didn't recognize that, tried to move people around all over the place and actually split up the magic. And they started breaking down the setup, the alignment, the alerts, the lessons learned. And the whole thing just collapsed really quick. Not collapse, that's unfair, but the whole thing changed so quickly. It didn't, those people didn't survive, unfortunately, as in length of service at that business. And they've had about 8 or 9 CEOs since I left. So, but it's all because of the scale model. And I'll come back to it. They didn't continue with that. And I'm not saying they had to, but to me, it's a fundamental way of getting a business to work, whether you turn up or not.
Yeah, I think so. And as I say, it's not, I think some people think of it as a retirement plan rather than you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good lesson because we help our businesses plan for that. And whilst you say financially, some companies, it's going to be difficult until they get to a certain size. What we say is everything you do in your business, try and have some kind of person that can do it, or some kind of plan that if you're not there, who's going to do it? Which means that when you start growing your business, don't grow it with you in the center. Grow it with other people. So actually it grows potentially quicker as well, because other people have taken on that responsibility and accountability, and you don't have to suddenly give it all away, which is what most people do.
It is difficult, of course, because people don't do things like you would do them, and so you do have to learn to let go a little bit, don't you? Even and because you can't be in control when you're not at the centre.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just our best wishes to you and your family. Obviously, hopefully that situation. I think you're back now, but I hope that situation is managed and alleviated a little bit. So our best wishes on that. And just a final thing. Again, something I heard, learned, adopted, whatever. But it's definitely what I see, that the only problem in business is that of leadership. Because if the leader has an understanding of where they're going, what they need to do, and they make decisions, and they do the right things at the right time, and measure the results and all that side of it, then there's a better chance of a business succeeding than there is if it isn't. So we do heavily focus on leadership, which most small businesses hear a word, but they don't quite understand it. So if there was one tip about leadership, one piece of advice that you would give our listeners today, what would you encapsulate it as?
Wow, what one thing for leadership. Yeah, the thing about leadership is it involves so many different things.
It does, yeah. That's why I asked just the one thing that would spring to mind. If you were looking at someone as a leader, what would be the one thing that you might focus on to see how effective they were?
Yeah, I think if I could pick one thing, it would be stay positive.
Okay.
So, and I think I say that because when things are tough, people are going to look to you for how they should react. And if you're negative or pessimistic, let's say, then people will also be like that.
Yes.
And I doubt that's going to get the response that will get you out of the hole.
Nice.
So, and I think equally, if things are going well, then you want to, maybe even raise the bar and seek new heights. And again, it's going to require a certain amount of belief, which has come from this kind of positivity that we could do this. And so I think generally entrepreneurs especially have to be quite optimistic, or they wouldn't even try.
No, that's true.
And to do these things. And I think if you show that sort of positive leadership, even in hard times, then you can bring people with you.
Yeah, because I suppose if you don't believe in what you're doing and the cause you're trying to do, then why would anybody else follow you in some ways?
Yeah.
And they say a leader without followers is just a person on a long walk, really. So there, that neatly brings us around to the end of our podcast today. It's been so amazing talking to you. As I said at the beginning, I was an entrepreneur in the wilderness a little bit until the business that I was with, we sold to glasses, and you came into our lives, or into my life, sat opposite me, and you just, through your calm and effective way, taught me a lot about leadership, management, all the things that I sort of understood but didn't quite know how and why they worked. So a massive inspiration in my life. I really appreciate your time today. And any closing words? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks to you too, Martin. It's mutual. I think that's probably that's the thing. Surround yourself by people you can learn from, and you'll stay positive.
Yes,
and you'll go
absolutely.
far.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. And we'll see you all next week or soon with another podcast about how the scale journey can affect your business. So take care, everyone. Speak soon.